Everybody, it's Robert Sell, frequent traveler. Thanks a lot for joining. And it is a crazy week. This lighting is a little bit weird. So it's daytime. Usually I don't record in the day, and so I'm getting actual natural light, which is quite strange here. So hopefully that's better for viewing. Anyway, crazy week for the coronavirus or COVID-19 or whatever they're calling it these days, because abstraction is probably the name of the game these days, just to try to keep us all relaxed and traveling. So there's so much to talk about. I think before I forget, the first thing is there's an app now that will try to show you where other people are that are infected, so you can stay away from that area. That seems to be quite interesting. I couldn't find the app on my phone, so if you have the app, please let me know. I think that could be a useful tool for travelers as we try to circumvent the globe, yet stay away from dangerous things like this. So if you have the app, please put it in the comments below. I'd really like to try it out, because guess what? The Johns Hopkins map is now not online anymore. It's now broken. So it's asking me to sign in to ArcGIS, which is probably the application they're using. Coincidence, perhaps? We expected that the data would become obscure and filtered, just like they did in China, to avoid panic. And all of a sudden now, because of the pandemic status that we see, because it's in multiple countries now, and it's gaining speed, and there's no controlling it anymore. That gate is now closed. We're all in. There's no stopping it now. So now we should start to see bad data, I would expect, right? As governments want to try to not allow us to not get us to panic. So I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed that's not available this morning. Hopefully it will come back online. It's marginal value anyway, because it doesn't really show, well, real data. And then it's also the lag is quite high, right? So it's showing you like what it looked like a few days ago, because it takes a while for these governments to report in the data. So that's also, but it's better than nothing, right? Which is what we have now. So I really hope that comes back online pretty soon. If it doesn't, that's really concerning. So if anybody has found a way to get it to work, please let me know. But I've checked it on multiple computers. It's asking me to sign in. I don't have an account, so I don't know how that's supposed to work. And I'll put those in the description down below so people can utilize that. So as we're traveling, we can get better information. Through my company, when I travel, I get active threat intel, so they will email me if there's an issue within the destination that I'm going to, and I find that's very helpful. So if you work for a large company, that's something well worth checking into to see if that's available, because I think usually you have to sign up for it, and it's well worth getting that data. For example, once I was in a big city, and it was telling me about criminal activity, violence that was happening just a few miles in front of me. So I detoured and avoided any risk of that. So well worth getting, especially for this. Large companies typically are getting information from around the world. So definitely look into that if you're an employee of one. So the news this week, crazy stuff going on here. The news is finally starting to admit that, okay, it's probably a concern here, both from a health but also economic perspective. So at the end of last week, we saw 12 more infections in the US. So we're starting to see an uptick here, right? And this is really important to think about. This is what we want to watch. We watched the cruise ship of plague, the plague ship, but that's offline now. They sent all those people home, right? I don't know how we can be so dumb, really, when we're looking at this stuff, right? So we collected a bunch of people, like a big petri dish on this cruise ship. They got sick faster than we could ever expect. Great little scientific project there to see what would happen, but really terrible for those people, of course. So if you are one of those people, or one of those people, I'm sorry. That's terrible what we did to them. We would expect them all to get infected, of course, right? And of course, most of them did. But and then eventually we had the wisdom to take them off the ship, which was good. Thank God we finally did that. But a little too late, right? And then what we did is we thought, well, why don't we just put them all on a plane together and fly them home? Because what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst is that you check them when they get on the plane and they don't show symptoms, of course, because that's the way this virus works, and we all know that. Even you and me that are not scientific experts, right? But they did that. And then when they got off the plane, they checked everybody again, and oh, lo and behold, a bunch of people are infected. Oh, geez, I wonder what we just did. Well, we just infected all the people that had survived so far without any infections, and we've now just contaminated them. And not only have we done that, but now we've sent them all around the world, right, to their different destinations. So we've just kind of helped this virus spread. To me, I mean, I'm sure there's reasons why they did that. I'm sure there's probably some legitimate excuse why we would do things like that. But to me, it just seems ridiculous, right? So anyway, but it gets worse. It gets even more amazing. So now in prisons in China, we're seeing the outbreak. As of end of last week, there was 230 people infected in the women's Wuhan prison. Wuhan, kind of the epicenter of where this all started. So not surprising. We're seeing that these concentrated areas of people where you can't actually go anywhere, kind of like the detention centers, aka quarantine centers in China, right? So if you're in one of those, you're going to get sick if you're not already, is the expectation, right? Just the way that it's set up by design, very much like the cruise ship. You're less than a meter away from the other person sleeping next to you. You're going to get sick. So it's really terrible, right? Because you're really condemned to whatever the end result of this virus is, and we don't know what that is, right? We don't know what the mortality rate is yet. We're hoping it's low. And hopefully that will be over time. We'll discover that, hopefully. But based on what we see coming out of China, it does not look like it's 2%. It looks like it's higher. Some really disturbing news coming out of China as well. What we're seeing is we're seeing people kill their animals, kill their pets. There's super disturbing videos, which I do not recommend you watch on YouTube, of people clubbing their dogs, which is stupid on so many levels. Just really disturbing. I can't. If you watch it, it will be burned into your mind, and you'll never be able to forget it because it's just really sick. So they're doing that because they think that the animals could be spreading the disease, which is true. They could be, but there's better ways to go about this than clubbing your loved dog, which loves you, right? So just even talking about it is sickening, right? So I'm going to move on. But just an example of what these sort of things can bring. South Korea, big trouble there. We see big trouble in South Korea and Japan. Bad news, right? South Korea, 100 new cases, all coming out of that church or spiritual group that was going on. Impossible to contain at this point, right? So they're now past the brink of containment, in my view. And my view is based off of what I've just looked at as far as different industry experts and stuff like that. Of course, I will make a lot of opinions in this video, and I recommend don't trust any of them. Do your own research. A little caveat there. I'm not a doctor either. So again, do your own research, make your own decision. This is really just what I'm saying based off of what I've seen and recommending based off of us as a traveler, right? So I'm traveling today. I'm flying to a different country today. So I'm frequently traveling. So this is always top of mind to me to analyze the risk. Both China and Korea have shut down all buses. So mass transit, of course, shut down. That's going to greatly impair their ability to operate because a lot of people that work in the factories, lower to medium income, of course, take mass transit, right? I take mass transit. If it's shut down, I'm probably not going to work. So if you can work from home, that's great, but only typically office workers such as myself can do that. You're not going to have, industrial factory people working from home because you just can't. So that's going to hit the economic side of things. In Japan, 10 new cases. They're canceling events. That's to be expected. They're doing the same sort of thing as we saw in China as far as mass gathering. Any people, and that's determined or that's defined by any event over 4 people, it looks like. So it also kind of brings up the question of the Olympics, right? So they're planning the Olympics right now. There's a lot of work going into that. Will those get canceled? I would say that's a high probability. So if you're looking at attending those Olympics, you may want to kind of think about that. Think about your travel there. If you did go there and they don't cancel it, what's that going to look like, right? So that's going to be a much different experience than what we have seen so far. So let's see. So the Diamond Princess, the plague ship, we talked about that a little bit. That was inevitable that they're going to infect everybody. Those people have now gone home to places like Israel. And what are we seeing in Israel now? Yeah, more infections. Um, 14 Americans from the ship were flown back and they were infected. Just bad news. And yeah, it's all sorts of bizarre things happening now. So the plane, the CDC says that they had the plane set up to separate the infected from the non-infected, but they did not do this because they didn't know who was infected. That sounds crazy to me. Just assume everybody's infected if you're taking them off of a cruise ship like that. Iran, this is really scary. So Iran doubled overnight, all in the same area around Tehran. So we're seeing a lot of issues there. A lot of people have closed the borders around Iran, and so that's really disturbing too, right? You don't close the borders unless there's evidence of something pretty large going on. And so closing of borders is a pretty big deal. Declaring martial law like they did in China, pretty big deal. So those are sort of flags to look for if you're thinking about planning to travel to these destinations. If they're closing borders, declaring martial law, not a good place to be, because it's very hard to get out if you want to go home eventually. You don't want to get stuck in these places, right? Especially if they have healthcare that's less than what you have back home. So that's what I'm thinking about as I travel is, am I going to a country where I'm going to get good care if I need it, if I get stuck there? So that's really important to think about. Another really disturbing bit of news, flawed testing kits have now become an issue. I don't know how that works exactly, but they're saying that there could be a flaw in some of the kits that they're using. So that doesn't sound good. If anybody has details on that, please let me know. I'm just going to look at the comments here. 3% death rate in Iran, but because of resources, Andre, thanks. Yeah. So 3% is really hard, I think, to figure out what that ratio is, right? Until we get more people, unfortunately, and we get it in a country where we can really trust the reporting, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, 800 as of yesterday. Korea, 1,000 suspected cases. I'm not surprised. Yeah, we know the numbers are fake, right? We know the numbers coming out of China are fake. So what we're looking for is reliable data. We're looking for details coming out of country that we can trust. We know that whatever measurements we get are going to be time delayed. So that's one thing we can't really get rid of. So we got to watch out for that. All right, what else is going on? Let's see. So out of Beijing, China, we're getting news that patients can get infected twice or multiple times. So this is relatively new news. I heard it a few weeks ago, but there was nothing really confirming it. And now there's a lot of chatter coming out of China this week that it can mutate its form and people can have full recovery, but then get infected again. And so they're tracking these cases right now. But what's really disturbing about it is what we see is people get infected, they recover, their symptoms are not too bad, they don't get full-on pneumonia or any complications as a result of that, but then they get infected again, and it's really bad. So that kind of begs the question, did they ever actually fully recover? And that's what they're testing right now. But it is possible that they're getting infected, they're getting better, and then they're getting a mutated version or something like that, and they're getting it much worse. So then that's when they're getting the really bad pneumonia and the complications, the organ failure, and all of that. The organ failure has really come up this week, and that's really disturbing as well. So of the fatalities, there's multiple organ failure, which is oh, I got to overmind. Thanks. I see your comment there. You can get infected once again if you get full recovery. That's how vaccine works. You inject weaker virus. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to get more details on this. So if we see a case study or any evidence that they're actually getting reinfected, I would really like to see how that's working, right? Because that is extremely disturbing. If you can get it, and then you'd think that you would get the antibodies, or much like a vaccine, but then get infected again. I'm not sure how we protect against that. But so if anybody has details on that, please send that to me. So the last bit of information I have is on the WHO, on the World Health Organization, which, there's tons of information coming out now on the fact that they're maybe not the best source of information. So I would like to hope that they would be, but I didn't know this, but there's a bunch of corruption, a bunch of big issues with the WHO that I didn't realize before. So I didn't really follow the WHO before, the World Health Organization. I didn't know much about them, and then I saw this virus come out, and of course they're giving guidance. I thought, well, they're the authority; they would know best, and they should. But apparently, there's I started to get a little suspicious actually once they were saying how amazing China was and how great they've been, which is just not true, right? They have done some amazing things as far as the quarantine of cities. We have to then ask, is that effective, right? So we're basically sentencing some people to death when we do that because they can't get out, they can't do things. And then it also seems to be not really consistent. So some people are quarantined, some people are not, depending on their status with the party, I think. That's what I'm hearing. So, I got suspicious when I started to see that because there has not been adequate transparency coming out of China. And I think we would all agree on that. I think that we would all agree, that has caused risk to the world. So when the WHO says how great that is, that's a red flag. When the WHO says, oh yeah, travel to China, no problem. Yeah, that's a red flag too for me because that's just not true, right? I would not travel to China right now. Hopefully in the near future, yes. But right now, no, that would just be stupid, right? So, I think that's really bad advice. Let's see. So I think that the WHO is very much in question now. I hope that we get better information. Then we start to look at the economics of what's going on. So trade show after trade show after trade show has now been canceled. Mostly trade shows in Asia, but I expect the same thing to follow suit in Europe because that seems to be the one that's accelerating right now, especially in Italy and places like that. But then also North America. So I have a bunch of events I'm supposed to go through throughout the year. I'm keeping close eye on those because I do expect some of those to get canceled. What we're seeing now as well is the shipment of goods out of China. So China is by far the leader in manufacturing. And so as those factories slow down, we're going to see a slowdown in delivery. We're already seeing it. So let's see some of the stuff that I see. Amazon is stockpiling China-made goods in anticipation for the slowdown. That's to be expected. A lot of people are talking about, well, if I get a package from China, do I risk getting sick? Could it have the coronavirus on it? I don't really know. I've heard no. I've heard many people say no, but these are the same people that are saying, oh, just travel without a mask and you'll be good. Yeah, not so much. So I think if this gets worse, I might spray my packages down with a alcohol solution just to be safe. They're usually wrapped in cardboard anyway, so I might do that. Something to think about. Early warnings being issued on corporations' returns and their earnings for the year. So we're expecting dips in pretty much everything. Electronics and automobile industry is already being felt. So we're already seeing cancellation of many different things, events, orders, things like that. Container ships. So this is something that's really interesting. So when we look at the flow of goods, container ships are one of the largest things that we see, right, as far as how things are moved. And we're seeing that that's down by 45% already. Now, that's an unconfirmed number. I've got that off of a couple different people, but if you have details on that as well, I'd really like to hear it. But even if that is much lower than 45%, I believe that to be true. But let's say it's 5%, right? 5% would have an impact on the world economy. So that's pretty scary. So I think this week is a really turning point for the world to see what's going to happen, what this is going to look like. We're seeing the mainstream media now start to get on this. It's now, you're no longer a crazy person if you're concerned about the coronavirus, which is good because, I think what we're expecting right now is a full-on pandemic. We're seeing there was a video of a bus coming into a quarantine center in Europe carrying infected people and or potentially infected people. And the people in that community just went nuts, right? They started throwing rocks at the buses. They didn't want the buses to come in. And, so there's a lot of panic around that, right? People do not want it in their community. And I can understand that, right? I don't know why we're doing some of the things we're doing. But I guess they thought it was a good idea to bring those people into that area. Oh, that was Ukraine. Yeah, thanks, Andre. Yeah, so Ukraine has not really been hit by this yet. I think they don't have necessarily the population density that we see in some of these other countries, or cities rather, and so maybe that was a good spot to bring them in. So people are starting to get quite concerned about that, and I would be too. I want to go to a place that that has a lower infection rate and that I'm safer. When I travel now, when I'm going through the airport, it's full on. I'm wearing my mask, my N95 mask. I'm not wearing eye protection yet, although I am taking it with me. So today in my pack, I will have not goggles like we see the people wearing, but I do have just clear glasses that you would wear when you go into a factory or something like that. I'm not wearing those yet, but I probably will this week. So overmind, I'm going to Denver, which I think is one of the safer areas. It's a cold city right now, so if we're looking at seasonal defenses against this virus, then it's not ideal. So I'd love to go somewhere that's a little warmer, but I will be going there. And not a lot of people in Denver are wearing masks yet. So the Denver airport, almost nobody's wearing a mask. I see a few people getting off planes that look Asian, and more Asians in general are wearing masks because I think they're perhaps coming from areas of more concern. But I wear a mask because I think that right now there's lots of people that are infected that don't know it. And of course, we wouldn't know it because there's no symptoms yet, right? So this is really I think one of the more dangerous times when wearing a mask is kind of looked upon as weird. And I got another question there. Yeah, P100 filtered masks. Yeah, so P100 is kind of the European standard, it looks like. Here in North America, we refer to it as N95 or even N1000. N95 meaning 95% effective. And that's assuming, of course, that you have a good seal around the face. And I think that's one of the more important things. We bought a few different types of masks. So far, my favorite is the 3Com N95 mask. And when you buy a 3Com N95 mask, there's multiple versions of it. The one I like has a little valve on the front. It's like a check valve. So it allows you to breathe out and it forces the valve open. When you breathe in, you're coming in through the fabric, which is quite nice. And so that allows this the condensation and the moisture to reduce and not build up as fast in the mask. And of course, that's what kills the mask. What we saw actually coming out of China as well a couple of weeks ago is they were saying that people were still getting infected with wearing masks due to the condensation, and that was causing the mask effectiveness to go down. So these masks are disposable. You can wear them multiple times in theory, and I actually do because now the masks cost a fortune, and so you can do that. Just be careful of them. I'm not sure if you let them dry out, but that's an option as well. So let me just show you the masks I have. Just going to pull out of the box here. So this is kind of my go-to mask that I would recommend. And so you can see there, got a bit of a reflection there. How's that? So you can see this is a little valve, and that's really nice. And these straps, if you want a quick lesson in comfort, and this is in my other videos as well, instead of putting these straps on just like that, what I find is cross them over. So the bottom one goes up over your ear and the top one goes below your ear. Not only does it help you make a better seal that way, but it also, I find it's more comfortable because with these masks, my flights generally within North America are, 3 to 4 hours. And the worst thing on these masks is it starts to cut into my ear. And that's super uncomfortable. So after a while, you start to get a little frustrated with that. And that's something to think about. Geez, I'm going all over the place on this video because I'm seeing that there's a lot of people on the live chat, which is great and fantastic to get those questions and things like that. So that's what I'm wearing with me. Oh, and gloves. I'm going to take gloves with me as well. So this trip, I will wear my gloves on the plane, just because I think we're at the point now where gloves are pretty easy to put on. I have skin colored ones actually now that I got. I know in one of my other videos, I had black ones, which are like I called my ninja gloves. Everybody knows you're wearing gloves, surgical gloves with black surgical gloves. The ones I have now are kind of like a white beigey color. And so they won't jump out as much. They won't freak people out as much. But so I'm wearing gloves. I'm wearing my face mask that I just showed you. I'm taking my goggles with me or my glasses, just in case the person next to me is coughing or sneezing or something like that. The skin-colored gloves, Andre just asked me a question, where did I get the skin-colored gloves? I got most of my stuff on Amazon. I am also lucky enough to know somebody who has a store that sells equipment for healthcare professionals. But I think that if I was to recommend where to go, Amazon is definitely an option. So you can go through the selection of gloves. I would also go to, where was it? Costco. Costco had a good deal on gloves. And you don't have to get fancy gloves, right? You just have to get something that you can wear that fits your hand, that you can wear for a few hours. They get really sweaty, which is disgusting. And so they don't feel good, even after 15 minutes. But, they're cheap, so you can swap them out, put new ones on if you need to. Costco, I would recommend. Other stores like, say, Walmart or your hardware stores, or anything like that. If you've got any sort of pharmacy, might have them as well. So in the States, it might be like CVS or Walmart. Check those out. But they're pretty readily available, unlike the masks now, which have pretty much sold out in many places. And even Amazon is a huge cost, right? So I typically put links down below to some of these things on Amazon. And full disclosure, I do get a couple, pennies if you click the link and buy it from there. But buy it wherever you can find it at this point, right? That's what I'd recommend. So yeah, so I'm wearing my mask. I'm not wearing, but I'm taking my goggles just in case the person next to me is coughing all over me. And then I'm also taking a lot of Purell. So I'm going to have my little travel container of Purell, which I put on my hands. That works really well. So every time I touch something, Purell. I also have some really nice wet ones. They're like, I say wet ones, but it's like an alcohol solution fabric that you pull out a little thing and you wipe your hands with it. I find those are good because if I want to wipe down my suitcase handles or anything else, like when I jump into my rental car, I wipe down the steering wheel. So that's really good. I like to have both my Purell and then also my wet ones. But it doesn't have to be wet ones. I use the wet ones just to describe it, but that's a fancy brand. Buy whatever you can find. At this point in time, it'll be double the price that you should be paying anyway, at least. But so find whatever you can for the best price you can. So I've got that. What else am I going to bring? I think that's pretty much it. I'm not going full out yet. I do have these filters here. This is a FEMA. It's also NIOSH P100, so that's the European rating for basically N1000, higher than the N95. And it's 40 millimeter, which actually fits my full face respirator. It looks scary when I wear that. But if we get into a state of quarantine in our individual cities, and just like China, where we have to go out food shopping, every few days, that's what I would probably be wearing at that point. So, but that's not for travel. I wouldn't go through the airport with my full, respirator on because it looks like I'm coming out of the SWAT team or something. So, the other interesting thing that I bought recently, and I've always wanted to buy one of these, so I guess this pandemic was just the excuse to buy it, was I bought a little ham radio. And, we won't need it for this, I wouldn't think. I think our communications platform is pretty good. It's only in, say, like an earthquake or something, you probably, have to have something like this. I'm a first responder as well. So for me, I have a proper radio back there somewhere, but would be kind of cool just to play with. So I use this as an excuse to do a little retail therapy. All right, let's see what's going on the message board there. Yeah, so 3M, they make a lot of good products. So 3M is the manufacturer of a lot of these masks. One quick tip for you. So if you're looking for masks, what I've found is 3M is the go-to brand on the internet to buy masks. So everybody Googles 3M N95. And so of course they're sold out and they're 10 times the price you'd normally buy them for. But if you just look for N95 masks, you'll find other manufacturers make some. They don't all look as attractive, but Google Honeywell N95. And I think I'll put some links down below as well to those on Amazon. And amazingly, they're still available. They're still the same rating, so you're getting the same protection. They don't look quite as nice, I think. Well, it depends what your style is, but I think they look a little bit different. But Honeywell does make good masks. They're rated the same, so theoretically, they should have the same level of protection for a fraction of the price, and they're actually available. So I would say better than nothing, right? Definitely, especially if the rating is good. Excuse me, I just have to drink a coffee here. Oh, thanks. I've been going for 30 minutes, so I'm starting to lose my voice. So I would check that out for sure. The brand is almost irrelevant. I think 3M rather has the best brand recognition right now, but definitely Honeywell is a legit brand. And there's a few other brands out there. What I would be careful of is when you're going on Amazon and you're looking at different masks that don't really look like regular masks and they're branded as N95. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of fakes out there. There's a lot of people saying they're N95 and they're whatever else rated, and they're not. They're just paper masks. And I think I see that the most with the surgical masks. Now, there are some surgical masks that are pretty good as far as their rating. Of course, they don't seal very well around your face. That's my concern. That's why I don't typically wear them. My wife, however, she buys them and she feels that they're fine. And I think depending on where you are, they could be sufficient. So if you're not packed in a room and can't move with other people, if you're kind of like walking through an area, those masks might, I mean, they're going to be better than nothing. So I would wear it if that's all I had. I prefer the one I just showed you, which actually seals around my face, which I think is the way to go for me, because I'm on a plane, right? I can't go anywhere. The person's stuck right next to me, coughing on me. I can't do anything about that. So I prefer those sort of masks. And what I also do, a little trick, is I take the air vent and I blast it so that it's kind of not blowing on my face, but blowing kind of like towards my knees. So what that's doing is it's taking whatever is coming towards me and blowing it down. And I think that works a little bit better. Also, the filtration on the planes, people often say that you're going to get sick on a plane due to the recycled air. And so the filtration on a plane is actually quite good. However, they would have to do the maintenance on that and change those filters. I'm not sure how often that's done, but theoretically, the filtration system on planes is good. And so I think people, when they get sick, they're not necessarily getting sick from breathing the same air as much as when they're touching things and then touching their face. So if you wear gloves and you wear a mask, that kind of prevents you from sticking your fingers into your mouth or your eyes and things like that. So that's what I'd recommend. So there we go. So I've been 30 minutes, a little longer than I anticipated. Had some great live chat questions. Just before I end it, any other questions from anybody? Happy to answer. No? Okay. All right. Well, safe travels out there. And I'll update you with the next bit of news as soon as I hear something. If you'd like any details on anything else as far as products, destinations, whatever you want to hear about, let me know, and I'm happy to do that. All right, over and out.